Hello, friends. Welcome to my channel. Today, I will recap the movie called Spider-Man: No Way Home. They managed to catch up to him with helicopters, cars, bikes, basically any other means of transportation that doesn't include web-slinging in hopes of getting away from a mob. Peter has the brilliant idea of heading over to his very own house without realizing that the press was still following, and well, now they have his address. Once he gets to his place, Aunt May Happy are having a little bit of an uncomfortable moment, if you will. She's trying to break up with Not So Happy, but Peter's quick to interrupt. Well, more like Spider-Man makes quite an entrance with his girlfriend as Happy. And Aunt May decide to briefly halt their conversation. Peter then alerts him of what's going on, but before he can even get a word out, the news are already openly broadcasting. Spider-Man's real identity and countless helicopters are swarming Peter's place. I guess it wasn't that much a good idea to send the press directly where you live as a family. Watches the news. James Jonah Jameson continues his incessant strikes on poor Peter. This time around, he doesn't have any mercy and decides to include his friend Ned and his girlfriend MJ as accomplices to the apparent murder. Of course, it isn't just a media frenzy, as you might have guessed when someone who dies blames you for their death. It's a little sketchy. So naturally, the FBI arrives to their door next, claiming that they're in search of Peter Parker. They proceed to take Peter into custody along with Ned, MJ, and Aunt May as the feds ask all sorts of questions about Spidey's involvements with basically any event that has gone on. MJ, Peter, and Aunt May appeal to their Miranda rights and do not say a word unless they speak to a lawyer. On the other hand, Ned accidentally confesses to being accessory and accomplice to Peter, potentially incriminating himself in the process. At night, MJ and Peter have a FaceTime call and they discuss their future and where they might be headed to college. More specifically, their dream university, MIT. The next morning, press is absolutely swarming Peter's school and waiting for his arrival there. He is greeted by his teachers and principal, who assure him that his school will be a safe place for him, except for his PE teacher, who believes that he is responsible for Mysterio's death. As expected, MJ, Ned, and Peter are harassed by a swarm of people at school, no matter they were fans or haters of Spidey trying to get away from the mob. Peter takes MJ to the school's roof with Ned. Quickly following suit, the trio talk about their hopes and dreams once they get to MIT together, discussing how they hope to live together during their college life. A few days later, Peter receives his first college letter holding the answer to whether or not he got accepted. Unfortunately for him, his 3 backup universities have regretfully declined his college submission. Big ouch. To make matters worse, the same goes for MJ and Ned, who have also received a rejection letter. Having said that, hope remains alive for their MIT acceptance letter. Once they get the letter from MIT, the trio of friends nervously get together to open them, expecting to spend their future together. The verdict is they didn't get in. Due to the recent controversy that has surrounded the 3, Peter is overwhelmed with feelings of guilt and decides to take it upon his hand to try to solve the mess he has created, or well, the mess that Mysterio has created. Our boy Peter decides to head on over to the Sanctum Sanctorum where Dr. Strange and the other wizard reside. Peter anxiously asked him if there was anything he could do to help his friends get into college. To be more upfront, he was asking Dr. Strange if he could make it so as if Mysterio never revealed his identity. Strange tells him that he doesn't have the Time Stone anymore, but he could cast a spell to make everyone forget he was Spider-Man. Upon hearing this, Wong warns Strange not to do it as there could be dangerous consequences. Steven replies by telling Wong that they've used it for a lot less. Of course, Strange and Pete agree to go through the spell. Anyway, despite the dangers it may entail, right? Because getting into MIT matters much more than the fate of not only one universe, but multiple of them. Strange then starts getting his wizardry done and warns Peter that everyone who knows about his secret identity will forget that he is Spider-Man at first. Peter seems to be okay with it, but then interrupts the entirety of the wizardry 5 times just to tell him to adjust the spell and have the people that knew he was prior to Mysterio ordeal still be aware of the fact that he, Spider-Man Peter's constant interruptions caused the spell to get out of hand and forced Strange to contain it to avoid something catastrophic from happening. In a subsequent conversation, Peter confesses to Strange that he didn't think about arguing his case to the admissions department at MIT, which infuriates Strange to the point of kicking Peter out of Sanctum Sanctorum. Peter then hurries to find an admission officer he can talk to. Fortunately for him, he's able to intercept a vice principal of MIT, who is heading to the airport. But as they get a talk, she reinstates that the university made the right decision. As they discuss the future or lack thereof at MIT, Peter spots quite a number of people screaming and running while the cars seem to flip through. As it turns out, we find out that Otto Octavius, otherwise known as Dr. Octopus, is an evil mastermind behind this attack. Later, Peter receives a call from Aunt May, who is naively chatting away with Norman. The same man that wants to destroy Peter. Norman decides to play the victim card with Aunt May, and explains that he's lost his home, can't find his son, and has a teeny-tiny voice in his head that sometimes commands him to do things he doesn't actually want to. Peter suggests taking him to Sanctum Sanctorum, but Aunt May refuses and asks him to have a little heart. Either way, our boy takes Norman to their safe place over at Strange Place and leads him to the basement where Ned and MJR. Otto recognizes Norman and is shocked to see him alive and well. But Sandman interjects, explaining that both Doc ACH and Norman died when fighting Spider-Man. Strange arrives and tells each and everyone that he is trapped, that he will send them back to their universe. But Peter doesn't want to sing, as that means certain death for some of them. Dr. Strange shushes him and continues performing the spell, but Spidey stops him, taking away the cube he was using to contain more multiverse villains and cast his magic. Strange brings him back, and a little bit of back and forth chase begins to take place in the mirror dimension. Ultimately, Peter gets the cube back and leaves Strange helpless and tied up using nothing but math. Spidey returns to the Sanctum Sanctorum and has a trade offer for the bad guys. He's caught so far, telling them that he'll devise a plan in an effort to keep them all alive. He then gives MJ the cube that Strange was using and tells her that he will call in case something goes south, and instructs her to keep it at worse comes to worse, and he has to send everyone to their universe. Then Peter takes everyone he has caught in Dr. Connors to Happy's apartment, where he shows him a machine can help them create antidotes to cure them from their superpowers and overall insanity. How nice! With Norman's help, Peter creates a chip that helps Doc control his evil tentacles, as they're the ones that actually possess Otto, and gives Electro an artifact that drains out the electricity. Just as things seem to go the right way, Peter's spider sense starts tingling, making him realize that something is wrong, very wrong. He figures out that Norman was actually just planning some evil scheme, and the Goblin's voice takes over as he confesses that he doesn't have pure intentions at all. Electro steals Iron Man's arc reactor and now has more power than ever, convinced that he doesn't have to give up his power. Him, the Goblin, and Peter get into a fight. Doc Ock tries to help but is quickly thrown out of the building by Electro. Sandman goes his own way and Lizard breaks free from the feast van where he was at. All the while, James Jonah Jameson is getting this on camera and recording every little thing he can catch from outside Happy's apartment. The Green Goblin completely overtakes Spider-Man and kicks his butt over and over. Drag him down to the floor where Aunt May is. May injects him with the antidote, but it doesn't work to subdue him, taking this as his opportunity to injure May with his glider. Of course, that isn't enough for Norman, who decides to shoot one of his bombs in an attempt of causing even more damage than one already caused. Peter tries to stop it, but he is far too late and the bomb explodes. He then hurries to check on Aunt May, who at first seems to be okay, and even gets to tell Peter that he did a good job by trying to help Norman, and the rest stating that unfortunately May seemed to be bleeding out, and well, as heartbroken as we may be, and May passes on as Peter desperately weeps. Happy witnesses everything from his car as the Fed arrives to the crime scene and attempt to take Peter away, going as far as shooting him in the arm. Thankfully, your heartbroken neighborhood Spider-Man manages to get away. The Spider-Man villain bonding time is cut short when the Green Goblin arrives a little late to the party, placing a bomb in a cube and opening up their universe to more and more foreigners. As the bomb sets off, MJ falls from a lethal height, but Peter number 3 is able to catch her just in time, in the same fashion that he caught Gwen right before she died. "I'm sorry, I just need to cry for a minute." "All right. Okay. Listen, this scene was so heartbreaking that it had me in most of the theater like this. As this is happening, thousands of people from other universes start arriving as Strange attempts to stop them. Peter number 1 then has this opportunity to set his vendetta on Norman with a blinding rage, consuming him as he beats him to a pulp, nearly killing him. He is stopped by Peter 2 as he tells him that this is not gonna bring me back. Tom's Peter stops. But unfortunately, Green Goblin has the audacity to stab Tobey's Peter in the back, and, oh my god, my heart just stopped for a full second when I saw this scene. Peter 3 then throws the antidote over to Peter 1 and actually manages to cure Norman and revert him back to his good self, leaving us with the inquiry. However, reality is still shifting all around and everything looks fairly apocalyptic. The sky starts to break, and we get a glance at some villain silhouettes such as Superior Spider-Man, Scorpion, Kraven, Rhino among others. I mean, I could be wrong, and maybe these are not the villains I mentioned, but I guess the point is, I cannot be the only one who at this point wanted them all to come through to fight Peter, right? Anyway, Peter decides to sacrifice himself and asks Strange to cast a spell for him one last time. This time around making everyone forget he even exists, and not only having people forget he was even Spider-Man. This would of course avoid more villains to come to Tom's universe and cause more mayhem. Strange agrees and decides to cast a spell while Peter goes to say goodbye to her friends and the other Spider-Man. We then see Tobey and Andrew's Peters returning to their universe and Tom's Peter telling Ned and MJ they're not going to remember him, but promises that he will do his best to find them. Doctor Strange finally finishes performing the spell and everything returns to how it was except for the teeny-tiny detail that no one remembers Peter Parker, and no one knows who Spider-Man is. Sometime later, Peter pays a visit to MJ, who is hanging out with Ned at work as he prepares a little speech to tell his former girlfriend to try to get her to remember him. However, when he sees just how happy she's looking, he decides to just order a cup of coffee as he strikes a casual everyday conversation until he finally leaves a coffee shop. Later, Peter decides to visit Aunt May's grave where he runs into Happy.